Welcome everybody to the Synapse Philosophy Group, and we are rocking with BJ Palmer's final book, Volume 39, Our Masterpiece. And we're skipping around a little bit because in a way you can feel BJ is going through memories, and he's reliving a little bit of it in there, and we can move past some of it, okay, and get to the philosophy part of it. But hey, this man has a lot to be proud of his father, of himself, all the work that BJ Palmer had done until this point. I believe he died this same year, the year after, very close by. So this was a life story of himself, and where we're getting into the mind of BJ and looking back at all these big things that he has done, and for us, which is really for the people of planet Earth, which is very exciting. So I'm going to mute out everyone, okay? And Alan is going to do some reading. We're going to do some skipping. He'll tell us where we are in the pages. We're going to stop and pause. We're going to discuss like we do, all right? I'm muting everyone now. And myself and Alan.
All right, I'm going to read on page 19, about 3/4 of the way down. It says, we read this at the very end last week and said, our ultimate objective was to locate and prove the location of an interfering medium between living brain and body, which occasioned a reduction in quantity flow between the norm production above and the abnormal manifestation below in functional disturbance in some specific organ or organs. And that's the core of what he says we've been doing here.
Yeah. And the next paragraph, really, he's talking about the techniques. We developed 300 different techniques in this next paragraph. You mind reading a little bit of that one too?
I'm going there next, absolutely. So the number 17, adjusting techniques. During our 60 years directly connected with the chiropractic principle and practice of the vertebral subluxation and its adjustment, we have directly been or indirectly associated with over 300 different methods of how to improve the efficiency of securing better, quicker, and more permanent results in less time, doing less to accomplish more, simplifying rather than complexing. Most methods and means have been ours in development. Many have been submitted to us by conscientious and sincere chiropractors who believed they had better and more efficacious means than ours. You know, I'd like to pause for just a minute there and say, I think that it's important to note that he talks here about accomplishing more, simplifying rather than complexing, doing less to accomplish more. And I think that I know personally, I found that I could use the closer I got to what the body wanted, the less force I needed to use. And I could adjust with very light force and get very dramatic results. And knowing full well that different people need different things on different days, and you might need more force on one day than another, but it's the knowing how much you can do with how little is part of our art.
And you said something very important just there. Some days are different. Some days it's the most beautiful. You're just touching things, and everything changes with that person because that individual has gone through a life, whatever has happened within their life journey of the day, and which makes them a different person, really, and whatever they're involved in. But what he's, this is beautiful, where he's taking input. People have submitted things to us. We've made changes. We're advancing our approaches to do, what did he simplify rather than complexing? That's what innate adjusting, that's what we're really developed, is the simplicity, not the complexity of adjusting, but becoming more simple. And where we're direct to the subluxation, leave it alone. Well, we back off, all of us. If you've had any experience in chiropractic, you always, it's not more, it's really less with the biggest change over the long term. And he's talking about practice over vertebral subluxation. Where did he say it? Improve efficiency, quicker and more more permanent results. You know, the permanent result. Do you expect people to hold their adjustments permanently? And volume 20 is just amazing, where he does pre and post x-ray, and he's done one adjustment, and it's 30, 60, 90 days later, the person's still holding their adjustment. And then they're, you know, they leave Palmer Chiropractic Clinic. And I believe they've been infirmed there usually 30, 60, 90 days in the clinic, holding their adjustment. I think that is absolutely beautiful. After one adjustment, they rested, they were infirmed and nurtured and cared for, and holding that adjustment. I wish I could get 30 days of rest after an adjustment. I mean, that would be really nice. I would be, honey, you got to take care of the kids. I'm going to get adjusted. I'll see you in a month. She'd probably push me out of the way and said, I'm going first.
Shucks, it was just when I started school at Sherman, and we used to have resting rooms.
Oh yeah.
And you'd adjust people and have them lay there for 15 or 20 minutes after an adjustment, and then post check them.
I have a lot of friends that do that. I have a lot of friends that still do resting, and I think it's very valuable. I don't have the space in either of my offices, actually. And I thought about it. I'm too much motion. And I'm not sure if we really, I'm working on that in my own spiritual consciousness about the rest, how important it is. But yes, it's amazing. A lot of people still do it. Yeah.
Ready?
Okay. Page 20.
Page 20. So we'll do that next one. At number 18 says, concussion of forces can produce contusions or ptosis of soft organic structures called prolapses. We, as chiropractors, are most concerned with concussion of forces as they affect osseous structures, their continuity and results thereof. The most violent concussion of invasive force upon the contiguity of any one bone would produce fracture. The next, lesser violence or a dislocation, and lastly, less violence, invasionary force, as it would affect relationships between vertebra, would produce a subluxation between adjacent vertebra above and below. We are often asked why we stress more attention to the occipito-atlantoaxial area and less to any other vertebra inferior to this area. I'm going to skip a paragraph and go to a study of all vertebra below axis proves that all such osseously are osseously interlocked. That's like a tongue twister. Dislocations or fractures of vertebra can occur. If they do, they will be out of their interosseous locks. A study of pre and post zygapophyses of contiguous vertebrae are locked both superior and inferior, inferior to superior, left to right, right to left, etc. This interlocking of vertebra is consistent with all vertebra below axis. There is no interosseous interlocks between occiput above and superior of atlas below, or between axis below and superior of axis, atlas below and superior of axis. The only exception to this rule is that the atlas in its entirety cannot be dislocated or subluxated posteriorly because of the interosseous lock of the odontoid of axis. You want me to pause there? Go on.
Well, you know, you can, keep going. Unless anybody wants to get some clarity about the atlas subluxation, I think this is just a simplification, really. You know, a little portion of this.
I'm going to see here. I'm sorry.
You know, he does.
I'm going to skip across here and go to on about halfway down 21, where he says, we constantly kept in mind, one, it was impossible to adjust the vertebral subluxation in a dead man. In a dead man, no vertebral subluxations with its four necessary and primary essentials. Therefore, a vertebral subluxation could only exist in a live person. Therefore, it took a life principle working in man from above down, inside out, to finally correct the subluxation. We constantly kept in mind, number two, The ultimate objective of getting sick people well was to increase flow of mental impulse supply by opening the occlusion occasioned by a vertebral subluxation, releasing pressure or constriction upon the spinal cord or its nerves, permitting a restoration of quantity flow from the abnormal quantity low to the normal quantity flow.
Keep going on there. Or you want to skip a little?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a note. Let me look and see.
So, what he's talking about really, it is important that right now in schools, they have these mechanical dummies that they're practicing adjusting on. And, I really feel we should, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of those things. I guess it just gets your hand on someone, but there is no substitute for putting our hands on people and really feeling the tone and vibration of the spinal cord, the nerves and all those, and the bones, all those things. Did you find your spot?
I did. I'm going to skip over to 25, I think.
Okay.
Top of the page there. Yeah, as far as that goes, I can see some value in practicing on a dummy, but you need to have the feel of a real person and how that responds to you. I mean, God knows we practice. I remember Don Thomas at Sherman. He's a good old boy. He get your tires in the back of the room. We had sections of automobile tires on 2x4, 2x6 that we used to practice toggling on the tires.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that was supposed to stimulate the resistance, before you got the toggle on a human being. But that was the purpose of it, to have you some feel for what you were doing before you touched a person. But there's a real difference to palpate and to adjust on a real body and feel how that responds as you do that. You're right.
And it's a world of difference, but there are fun tools like that. I really want to touch one of those mannequins. I want to see what it does feel like. I'm like so curious about them.
Yeah, I still have my toggle box that a friend of mine made, actually, that used to practice the set that you thrust on it and it would click.
Oh, yeah,
and you
I've
weren't
seen
supposed
those.
to let it bottom out. You would feel it if you hit the bottom.
That's cool.
Get in and out.
Who is it? Petra's husband. I've forgotten his name all of a sudden, but he developed, he's got he's made that torque toggle instrument in stainless steel or aluminum, and he's selling those right now. I haven't gotten one from him yet. They're super cool. All right. So you want to skip to 25 in those early years? Yeah, that's it. Oh man, I haven't seen one of those in a long time. That's pretty neat. Yeah. Got it.
I used to practice on that. I still work on that, even though I'm not seeing people.
You just muted yourself out.
I got it back. Sorry.
There you go.
I said I still play. I don't see as many people now, but I still practice on that to make sure I stay in shape, so I'm doing a good job for folks. So I think we said 25. So
yep.
In those earlier years, all we had to go by to reach our conclusion as to where to adjust was the physical irregular relations between one or more physical vertebrae. This limitation of our understanding of the law not being at work occasioned a physical vertebral subluxation, occasioned by a physical subluxation, did not, cover the entire field of our understanding. We must look further back and behind the physical to learn more about the proving where, when, how, and why the law was not at work, which it was in some people, some places, other people, other places. Here then was a broad field of study to discriminate why and where. This then required an exhaustless study, not of the abstract law incognito itself, for that was beyond the ken of mortal man, but why this law did not work in all of the people at all times. In some people, in some places, some of the time, in other people, different places, part of the time, and later they recovered by or through some accident or miracle without the aid of man. Later, when the NCM, NCGH, typograph, and other allied studies came into being, we were able to prove dominant abstract factors where they did or did not work into and through living man, as to whether there were interferences to this law, quantity, flow of its mental impulse study for brain to body from above down, inside out. When we reached that joint study of abstract linked with concrete, we were now finding a true vertebral subluxation, and then only when we found 4 elements in one location did we adjust a vertebral subluxation. This broadened our field of study in one instance and narrowed it in the other, and adjusting only when we find the disconnections of 4 elements in one location did we adjust the vertebral subluxation. And so here we are on the turning to the next page, 26 at the top. To have a vertebral subluxation in fact and not in theory, we must have A, vertebral misalignment in disrelationship between its mates above and below. B, an occlusion producing pressures upon spinal cord or spinal nerves. C, leading from brain to body. D, producing an interference to normal quantity flow of mental impulse supply from above down, inside out. E, reducing the carrying capacity of spinal cord or spinal nerves exhibited as dis-ease at peripheral endings of these fibers. When these 4 elements are present, 2 abstract, 2 physical, we now know where to adjust. Little did we know then that there also could exist many misalignments, but such was always within their interarticular osseous locks and was not, in fact, a vertebral subluxation with 4 necessary elements being present.
Let's talk about that one moment, because the many often their fixations were adjusting, or they're misalignments, but they are not a subluxation. The subluxation must have a nerve component, plus all those other things. I mean, he says that, but the nerve component is the defining factor of the subluxation. Christian, great to see your face. But that misalignment, you might hear a crack when you adjust it, but it didn't have nerve interference and it was not adjusting a subluxation. Very often we call that a manipulation and not an adjustment, right? We adjust.
Crack a knuckle and make it make noise.
You can crack your knuckle and make it make noise, but you didn't adjust a subluxation. I was at a seminar not long ago, and this guy said, you know, you can have, he said, nutritional subluxations. And I just like fell out of my chair. I didn't know what to respond to that, honestly. Now you can have chemical stress stressing the neurology coming through the neural system, subluxates that vertebra, affects the nerve, and then we have dysfunction and of that nerve, the vertebra, and you know the capacity for it to function at its best. But you know, you can't. Food does not have subluxation. Okay.
Food, well, it can be a cause. It can be causal.
Yeah.
You have physical,
like I said,
chemical, and
stress.
emotional things affect and create subluxations.
Yeah.
And so you can have, if you say food, you include a poison as something you're going to ingest.
Understood.
And so that would be the extreme example, but that could cause an interference that would then cause an interference with the transmission of information, whether it causes, a constriction of muscles that cause the bone to misalign and interfere with it and cause a pressure on nerve, or something else to happen there.
Christian has a question.
I was thinking about the 4 elements, and I just want to see or hear about your opinion about using the nervoscope in the new technology that they are using here about the thermal scanner.
Yeah, and I think my friend Omar, he's making up those thermo scanners, and Omar, and he makes the tables too. And the thermal scan is fantastic. I mean, it's the next step from the neurocalometer, which use thermal couplings. And I used my neurocalometer I used the other day, as a matter of fact. But I have the Titron with which is thermal scanning. You can use those, and that's where you change. If there's a difference in temperature of heat, there's more work, right? So if there's more work, that's where it's finding that subluxation. So
well, the other side of that is that potentially what you're talking about is it could be that there's less heat on one side.
yes,
You know, and in reality, that may be the actual indicator, because that's the sympathetic response where you have the stress response where the muscle constricts. So it's the cold side that is creating the heat differential rather than one side being overheated.
now
They used to talk about heat being, you find the hot spot to adjust, which is the same thing, but the hot spot, you know, side to side, they said it's because the nerve energy was backed up. Well, we know that's not what happened now.
Well, with the thermal now, though, we're really looking at patterns, and BJ went into patterns with what we talk about. If someone has a consistent pattern, you do 3 scans and see where their pattern is while they're subluxated. When we adjust them, the pattern changes. It can be multiple different patterns, but if they go back to that same pattern, you know that's a subluxation because they're in the subluxation pattern. Pattern work is interesting, and that's more upper cervical. They spend time in that, and BJ spent a lot of time with the what's it called, the neurocalometer, but it had the graph, neurocalograph.
Yeah.
Which now those thermal scanners, they do that all for you. But that was a big invention. First we had the scope, and then we were able to graph the readings, which is pretty cool. And when I was in school, we were talking about yesterday, me and Alan, or the last week, I had clipboards, and every person that came in, we had the scans printed out, and, you know, a little sticky glue or, you know, a clip on there to stick inside their folders. So have you used one of those? Is that where you have the question, or Christian?
Well, I was just thinking, what do you think is more specific?
Palpation. I'll say that right now. You are the most refined machine in the room. I don't care what anybody says, and people will negate me left and right, because you have all the power God gave you in your hands, okay? The machine just reproves it. Most of the time, you palpate it and reprove it. Take an x-ray, reprove there's a misalignment, but you can't find a subluxation on an x-ray because you can't find the nerve component on that. So ultimately, it's one of the checks. I fully and absolutely, the more you refine your palpation, the better you are at finding that. And one day when I come back to Mexico, now that they're dropping the mask mandates on the airplanes, won't last much longer. I'll fly again. I won't fly if I have to wear a mask. I haven't worn a mask, and I will not. But I'll come out. We're going to work on palpation in Mexico and do innate adjusting. Does that sound good?
That sounds awesome.
Awesome, man.
Pattern work, as you were saying, pattern work is a key, and you can validate your palpation. You can, with it gives you the science to back up, the validation to back up what you already know in your heart in some ways, right?
And that's where we have to
it's
trust.
Great to look at the, it's
The
great to look at
trust
the
is
patterns,
most
to use them.
important factor.
It's you want to, I did what Larry Markson used to call the what he used to call it, the magical passing of hands. And you just, I run my hand over somebody's spine just as they're coming onto the table. I just run my hand down their back, and sometimes I don't even touch them, and can feel areas where where something isn't right. And then I start to do my leg checks, and it validates things that I already know, right? or if I was doing activator, I would do the leg activator test, and it'd go, oh yeah, there it is. It said I found that already, but that's good. I found it another way.
So trust is the big part. That's what you're saying. And,
Yeah.
trusting ourselves and our hands and really being the most refined machine in the room. And that's what I always think of. And the more
and more you use the equipment that validates it, then when you're in situations where you don't have the equipment, you don't worry. You just go ahead and do what you find, and you feel totally confident in it at that time, because you know that every other time you're doing it, you always find it when the machine's double checking you. So you go, I'm good here.
I'll give you a task to do. And this is what one of my chiropractors did when I was in school. He said, start feeling the walls. See if you can find the electrical wires behind the wall and see where there are. And then we started that in first quarter. And all over the walls, we were climbing in the library and feeling all the walls in the classes, in our houses, everywhere we went. Funny. And then we were starting, I bet I could feel the hot water behind the wall. Is that the pipe behind the wall? So, you can do it in a lot of different ways too, of refining your touch. I do it all the time with my piezoform. I rub it on the table. I feel different textures with my piezoform. Now, over 20 years, my piezoform is is just as sensitive as my fingertips. So the more you make, and I make my fingertips very, very sensitive, the more you become sensitive to things, you'll start even seeing the subluxation in someone when they're walking into the room to you. You could see it. We're right where to go. And one of the other things we teach is really getting involved with the bioenergetic field of someone. You come into their field, very often you can come right into that subluxation once you're aware of the energy around them, and the body will draw you into that moment. You just have to trust ourselves. That's the one thing. Practice, 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 and practice. Are you in school now, or are you practicing in practice now, Christian?
I'm still in school, but I've noticed that after palpating for a while, I feel like there's some kind of energy in my hand that it's almost most of the time there. Even if I make my hand get closer to my body, I feel like there's energy coming out. And if I close my eyes, I can concentrate more, and I feel more sensitive. But I can only do it with my left hand, and with my right hand, it's a bit harder to do.
That's so
But I'm
funny.
practicing.
That is amazing. When I was with Sue Brown, we were doing BGI. It was 2001 at Life West. I said relatively the same thing, that I could feel things with my right hand, but I don't feel it with my left as well. And when you said that, I was just flashed back to 2001, sitting with Sue Brown, and she said, it will come. Just keep doing it, right? Because you're in stereo and your body wants that stereo. You just haven't built those neurons yet, and it'll come. That's amazing. You're right on track, man. I'm excited for you.
For a long time, I didn't understand what that energy was that I would feel in my hands, or that I could use. And you can use that to find subluxation. So it's very sensitive, and it's what they call in some of the Eastern cultures the chi. And your chi energy is being transmitted through your fingers, comes out your fingertips like that. When when in Tai Chi, you want to find that, because that's the force you're using as you do your Tai Chi. But to go back 1 second to things to practice to develop your palpation skills. There's two things that we used to do. I think Haig and I talked about this once too. We used to palpate to find a hair under different pages of different numbers of pages of paper. You put a hair under a page and 2 pages and 3 pages and 4.
Like Bible paper, like in a Bible, that thin paper, and then you see how far.
We used to use notebook paper.
Notebook paper. We used phone books actually, but they don't have phone books anymore. So.
But it got to the point where if I was using lined paper, I'd feel the lines on the paper. And that would be a price. So the other thing you do is palpate your arm and feel the different layers of muscles in your arm. See if you can go through and feel the exterior muscles and the 2, 3, 4 different layers of muscles on your arm as you're palpating, because you have to use different amounts of pressure to get through the different layers and to feel just the hair and then just the skin and then the different layers of muscle to
let's move on a little bit. Let's
Yeah.
move on.
Okay. I'm going to go down to the last paragraph on 26 that says, the cause of caries, necroses, osteomalacia, tuberculosis, the vertebrae of the spinal column is no different than similar conditions existing in other bones that the vertebral column. Adjustment of the vertebral subluxation, if done right, at the right place, right way, right time, when you know when to stop, will permit innate mental impulse source to flow normally through above, down, inside out, and to correct pathologies in vertebrae as in other bone distantly removed. Today, by correcting, not adjusting a misalignment where they are, we can temporarily relieve condition. In no sense is that is what we do to misalignments adjusting. A vertebral subluxation to correct the basic cause of the primary with intent to get the individual well, making a difference in our thinking between giving some temporary relief and permanently getting the case well by adjusting the subluxation, leaving all misalignments or adaptive curves alone. Our contourometer so pungently proves in correcting to the 2 frequent misshapen spinal column. One large book, our volume 20, as Haig cited earlier, as we recall, had overlapping different paragraphs, different graphs, then pre and post on cases to prove this statement. So he's saying, he's differentiating here between adjusting, not adjusting, but manipulating a misalignment versus adjusting a subluxation.
Correcting. He says correcting a misalignment. The manipulation we don't use anywhere in our vocabulary. So he's correct a misalignment. We adjust subluxations. Those are the difference. I don't know how that would be different in Spanish. How do you say? You say adjust, right? How do you say adjust a subluxation in Spanish?
Ajustar.
Ajustar. So would be correcting a misalignment. How would we say something? How would that be different?
It is different because correcting, we are only like focusing on the way the vertebra is placed in the body, but it means it doesn't have any nerve pressure. And when we adjust, we are releasing the nervous system. That's the difference. Maybe we are correcting a compensation that Dr. Gonster used to say, and it's not a potential subluxation.
That's it. And the maestros at your school are teaching you very well. I like to hear that. Are you at Univet? Univet?
Yes, I am.
Did we meet when I was there?
Yes.
Awesome. So that's where I want to pause for now. Okay. That area right there, that is, I mean, this whole last 3 paragraphs should be posted at every chiropractic office, chiropractic school, and everything around the world.
Yeah, this page and a half right here from the 26 to 27.
Yeah, absolutely. I may just print those out for myself and use them because it is excellent and it should be the basis of every chiropractic textbook, if anything. Wow, that was a lot of really good BJ Palmer saying this is what it is and it is nothing else. I have spent my entire life researching this far beyond anybody else. Nobody can counteract me from what I've done is what he's basically saying. And I absolutely love it. And I applaud him for it because he saved millions of lives and untold lives still to come for the future. And gave us, and including mine, getting adjusted chiropractically, subluxations being adjusted. And, I think we're really going to be, I know we're changing the world for the better. Absolutely, positively. Okay, go ahead, Alan. Did you have something?
No, I was giving you a thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Anybody else have anything you want to say, anything before we go tonight? Carol, beautiful to see you again. We miss Bob. He's in Haiti right now, and he's on a mission trip, right? I can't hear you. Hold on. Unmute it.
Muted. You're still
You're
muted.
still muted.
Hey, you can unmute her too.
It says
There we go.
ask to.
There you go.
Go ahead, Carol.
There you are,
Yeah,
Carol.
he's having a great time. He says he's got 9 students that he's helping learn how to adjust. Some people from Life and some people from Logan. So he's actually really happy to show people how to adjust.
That's
And
fantastic.
Steve Smitty is doing it like only upper cervical, and he'd had this patient for like 30 years. This lady's been coming in, and she has vertical now, and she can't get adjusted like when they lay on your back.
Yeah.
So he's just been toggling her, and so he says, "Oh, this mission trip's going to be great," because he thinks he's just going to toggle everybody, and it's like he wants to see if that's better than doing all these other adjustments that he's always been doing.
That's great. That's
Yeah, 'cause
great. I
he's like,
love
she can't
toggling.
handle it anymore. She can't lay
Yeah.
down, and so I mean, Sigafus always was arguing with him about you don't need to do all these adjustments, and
I remember that.
yeah, because he
I-
likes full spine. Rob's a full spine person.
Yeah.
So
I remember those conversations with Sigafus
Yeah.
back in the day with
yeah,
Bob.
we were in his gathering and stuff, and we
Yep.
Well,
Well, he's having a blast.
Started eighth quarter. And she has to take her entrance exam in 2 weeks. So pray
Eighth
for her.
quarter already, your daughter's in? I
quarter,
can't
eighth
believe it.
quarter. She's going to be in
Fantastic.
clinic then in like 3 weeks. She has to get a clinic jacket, and can you
That's
imagine
a
it went
big
like
day.
this? It's like, Mom,
That's-
what are you doing? Oh, nothing.
That's a big day for her, though. That's
so she's all
fantastic. I'm
excited,
happy to
so-
hear that.
Yeah, so just put her in your prayers. I know
Well,
she's
she
praying,
is.
but,
I sent her an invitation for tonight.
yeah. Oh, good. Well, she had first day at school today, so
Oh.
I don't know if they.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so, all right. Well, I
Well-
don't want to take too much time. Everybody's busy.
No, it's cool. And Christian, great to see you. Have you
Yeah,
back
great to
here
see you
with
in
our
school.
time
It's
change. It's
great.
been a little cuckoo, And Alan, great to see you again. We'll be back next week,
Next week.
picking up kind of where we are right now, and we'll be moving forward as we always
right.
do, right?
All right. Good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like this class. All right. Talk to you later.
God
Talk
bless
to
you
later.
guys. Have a
Thanks, guys.
beautiful
Thanks
night.
for everybody for being here.
All right.
Hey, thank you.
You're
Bye-bye.
welcome.
Right.
All
And
right.
thank you. Keep on going with the philosophy.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Christian,
me too.
thank you for being here to talk to us. You ask good questions.
That's right. We need the kids.